Okay, we got it sorted. So, hi everyone. So, like Tyler said, I'm Aurelia and I'm a Neurodiversity Advocacy Lead for Google Ireland. So this is a site with about 5,300 people. So this is quite a large site. If we account for contractors, we have about 8,000 people. So that's quite, like I said, a large site. It's also the sales headquarters for Google in EMEA. So we have a lot of diversity there in terms of nationalities, ways of thinking, age, all types of different people, which means we have a lot of neurodiversity in itself as well. So the reason I came to this sort of job, which is actually not my day job, I'm actually in sales, believe it or not, but we have something called 20% roles at Google, where we can choose to sort of dedicate a part of our time to missions that are important to us. So this can be related to Google products, or it can be related to employee resource groups, so helping different communities. And I've chosen to dedicate some of my time to helping and supporting neurodivergent communities. And why did I come to this? Is because I was diagnosed autistic when I was 34, right? So a couple of years ago. So when your identity is sort of changed in your mid-30s, it's quite shocking, right? Especially when you've been working for 15 years plus, and you have to sort of reinvent yourself and understand what it means for you as an adult moving forward. And actually, sort of the pandemic and working at home helped me a lot to understand what it meant for me. And that's why when I came back to sort of work full-time, I decided to work helping neurodivergent communities in the workplace and create the future of work. So my role is to represent and advocate for the neurodivergent communities. And what I'm going to talk about today is, of course, why neurodiversity is important. I think we've covered a lot of that already. But what it means to be neurodivergent in the workplace. For example, we know, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about autism and ADHD, which are kind of the poster children of neurodiversity. But it also means taking care of people who are dyslexic, dyspraxic, have Tourette's, epilepsy, and also form of acquired neurodivergence, right? So PTSD, or if you have a traumatic brain injury, you can also acquire a sensory processing disorder, right? So you don't necessarily you're not necessarily born with neurodiversity, you can also acquire it. So that's something that we need to be mindful of. And so what it means for the future of work. So moving forward, you may have seen this statistic, right? 15 to 20% of the general population exhibits some form of neurodivergence, right? So that is a significant amount. If we take, for example, the Dublin site I've just mentioned, the conservative estimate of 15% means around 900 people. That is an enormous amount of people. Some of them will have conflicting interests as well. For example, I am a sensory avoidant person, so I shy away from lights and from sound, right? And you have people who are sensory seeking, so they look for exactly the opposite, right? So how do you reconcile these two types of profile in the workplace, right? Some people are going to be wanting to be in the office 24 hours a day, and be in contact and stimulated. And I'm the opposite. If I could work in a cave in the dark, that would be great, But we have to find a way to sort of make it work, right? So what do we do at Google? I'm here also to talk about the way we sort of structure the support that we have internally. And something that we touched upon already and that is very important to us at Google is the principle of nothing about us without us, right? So that's why I, as a neurodivergent person, I'm going to talk about this, and I want to advocate for the need of the community, especially people who are maybe more vulnerable and don't feel like, talking about what they need necessarily, or feel like they don't have the necessary support or strength. And that's why we have people like me, but not exclusively, right? I'm not alone, fortunately. So inside Google, like I said, we have employee resource groups. So we have a lot of different ones. It's basically sort of aggregates of different communities. So we have the Disability Alliance, of which I'm a representative of, which obviously represents persons with disabilities. This is a very large organization, as large as there are types of disabilities, right? We have other groups like Black Googlers, for example, Jewish Googlers. So it covers a lot of different intersections and community. We have Pride, which is obviously a large one as well. No one is just one thing, right? I'm not just autistic. I'm not just a woman, right? So everyone is going to be a mix of different things. And that's why it's important to have all these ERGs who work together, because all your identities sort of mesh at work, and the way you express them is also going to be a little bit different. So I talked about, autism, ADHD, and the what other types of neurodiversity you have. And of course, we have a mission at the Disability Alliance, which is the one that is displayed on the screen. So we try to make it more equitable and accessible for everyone, right? And what we try to advocate for as well is the distinction between the social and the medical model of disability, right? So some of you may have heard of this. So the medical model, of course, stands for the way clinicians are going to be looking at neurodiversity, right? So if you look at the definition of autism in the diagnostics manual, it's a deficit in communication skills. So I hope I'm doing okay. But you have also a deficit in understanding, social cues, for example. So a lot of the words are going to be very negatively oriented. So you have deficits, you lack in something. You clearly are not sort of a complete person. And it's going to be the same for ADHD, for PTSD. There's something wrong with you, right? So, and that's a medical diagnosis. So I found it helpful to get a diagnosis in the sense that I can now access support systems, right? So that's helpful. But when we talk to people in the workplace or in life, it's more important, I think, to consider the aspect of the social model that says that basically I am not disabled, but the world is making me disabled, or the world is disabling me, right? Once more, if we were living in the dark constantly with no noise, I would do great, okay? So it's a question of sort of perspective. So I think it's important to keep that in mind and, stay away from words like condition or deficiency or cure, of course. Those are not words that you want to hear as a person in the workplace. It's not nice, obviously, but it also makes you feel like you lack in something and you're just not good enough. So that's something I wanted to also point out. So in terms of example of the way we do it at Google, we have a steering committee for the Disability Alliance. So there's a lot of people working on those topics. So we are very lucky that we have an executive sponsor who's actually also the EMEA, so the Europe, Middle East, Africa sponsor for the Disability Alliance. So we have executive leadership on our sort of side to advocate and push for these topics, which is always very helpful. And then we have a chapter lead. So I have a colleague who's a chapter lead in Dublin as well, and I'm the neurodiversity lead. We decided to sort of separate these branches just because it covers already so many different people that if we can focus our efforts already on neurodiversity versus other types of disability, we can maybe cover more ground. And we have a lot of different groups as well in the Disability Alliance. We have, for example, the deaf-glers. So this is for Googlers with hearing impairments who are deaf. We have a group for blind people or people with vision impairments. We have a group for wheelchair users. Obviously, there's a lot of different groups. So everyone can sort of find their communities, and that's how we support them. And then we have a bunch of people on the steering committee. So this works exactly like a company, right? So we meet once a month, and we sort of work on our projects to support the community, of which I'm going to talk about a little bit more now. So why this is important, I've covered that already a little bit, but I wanted to show you this graph because this is actually an updated version. I saw this recently because we usually see the first two panels, right? So equality and equity, and they've updated it to add the justice one, which I think is great. So for those of you who haven't seen this, there's a difference between equality and equity, right? You've surely heard the phrase, treat people the way you want to be treated. I urge you not to do this, okay? Don't treat people the way you want to be treated. Treat them the way they want to be treated. So this sort of images also illustrates what that means, right? So if I take the example for me, right? If you put me in a room that has a lot of overhead lighting, I won't be able to hear you because my entire body will be focused on processing the light source. So you're doing fine, and I can't hear anything. I don't understand what's happening, so I can't do my work, I can't do anything, right? So we have to find a way for everyone to sort of exist in the same space. And of course, the third panel that's been added sort of recently to this image is that if you actually remove the systemic barrier, we won't be having this conversation. And I think that's why we're here today as well, to sort of think of what these barriers are, how we could remove them. So of course, when I'm talking about lights, I don't mean we need to actually destroy all buildings, but that's just an example, right? What kind of barriers am I facing, are you facing, are we facing, are these groups facing, etc.? And what can we do to not only mitigate the circumstances, that affects negatively these communities, but just simply remove them? So this is how we do it sort of at Google. We have a lot of different approaches. So I'm going to just list them here. So we have community engagement, awareness and training, workplace design, and advocacy, right? So community engagement, for example, I'm going to give you a very practical example. We have chat rooms on Google Chat, right? For people who are autistic, people who have ADHD. These chats are like completely casual chats. There's no managers there. It's simply for the community to exchange and have peer networks, right? So that's very important, especially if you are late diagnosed, to find your community, right? And you say, wow, you know, I'm having the same experience at work. I'm so glad that I'm talking to you. You know, let's talk more about this. That is just super important. And I think, you know, you can relate to that in your life as well, right? We also have message boards, networking events. You have the ability to request a consult with the Disability Alliance. I often have, and I wish it was less often actually, people coming to me saying, look, I have ADHD, I have dyslexia, I have dyscalculia, and my manager doesn't understand my problem basically, or my challenge. I need your help to facilitate through either training or through a conversation. And of course, it's simply because people are not aware, right? Everyone is just very good intentioned, but we need more awareness. And that's how we also identify maybe the challenges in the workplace where people need more training. We recently did a training with Simon Minty at Google, who's a fantastic disability rights advocate, called Acting on Disability for Manager. And it was directed at all the directors and all the managers. And we had great success rates. It was super engaging. But this is the type of thing that we need to do more of. And people are actually find it quite engaging and interacting as well. In terms of awareness, of course, I do a lot of events. This is one of them, right? I'm here doing the awareness now, talking about what it means to be neurodivergent and also sort of demystifying neurodiversity, right? Who are all these neurodivergent people in the workplace, right? They are here. They're just often hiding in plain sight, right? They're actually masking because they're afraid of the stigma. They're afraid of what people will think of them. I myself was wondering, should I talk about this? Like, what are people going to think about? Because I know I was raised in, the late 80s, and if you have told me about autism before I was diagnosed, I would think of Rain Man, And that's okay, that's the knowledge I had at the time, right? So what matters is that you learn new things and you become curious about it and you try to understand the lived experiences like Tyler was talking about. And that's why I want to talk about it, because 15 to 20% means that there's a lot of people in this room that are going to be neurodivergent, right? So it's something to understand that it's simply a normal variation of neurology, and that moving forward, we should all integrate this fact as something that is just normal and to be discussed, right? In terms of workplace design, I think Gokul mentioned that already a little bit. So we work to try and make the spaces better. A lot of our buildings, and that's not specific to Google, are like 1980s or 1990s buildings. So they're just not great in terms of accessibility, right? Some of them have to be retrofitted. But we do a lot of work to make the space more custom or more tailored for everyone. You can order, for example, something to cover the overhead lighting. When I go to the office, I have a special room that I can book. So we do a lot of different accommodations for people depending on their needs, and hopefully we'll have more inclusive spaces with just more modularity and more flexibility in the future. And the work of advocacy is basically the one I'm doing right now. So we talk to different organizations. We talk to a lot of charities. That's also something I do with my colleagues. I do a lot of talks internally to managers, to other Googlers. And we talk to other corporates. For example, I often have talks with the head of neurodiversity at Philips and JP Morgan Chase, AstraZeneca. I mean, there's actually a lot of these companies that are investing more time and more resources into understanding what this means, and also increasing inclusion in general and not just diversity, because it's great to hire diverse people. If you can't retain them in the office, then you've gained nothing. And you may have lost more, actually, because they also leave with a sense of maybe bitterness or even not having the sense that they can succeed in the workplace, which is even worse, right? So this is why we talk about this so much. Thank you very much.
It may sound like we have it together. It may sound like we're perfect because we have all of these things arranged. But inside, it's a hot mess. It's structured chaos. And it's going to be true this way in every company you go to. So I just wanted to bring one statement. This is a matter of progress, not perfection. There's no place that's going to be perfect for everyone. There's no product that's going to be perfect for everyone. So as we move forward in this hackathon, we're coming up with ideas, we're coming up with opportunities to create a personalizing approach to make the workspace work for us. To echo what Aurelia was just said, in the social model, it's the environment that makes us disabled. It's not the disability itself. So hopefully together we can put something down that can be helpful for people moving forward.
Thank you for that.